Buju wago shindagu migazin dodem gazaga squaji me kag hindunjiba. Ai inongom niwi tabado dan ajina e nan degen. I'll share a little bit about colors in the Ojibwe language. I usually don't start with this topic when I am starting an elementary Ojibwe class, although we do get into it a little bit later in the semester. And the reason is colors are a little bit complicated in Ojibwe. First of all, the entire language is broken into two major realms, animate and inanimate. And I think what is considered animate and what is considered inanimate is sometimes highly misunderstood. For example, just because something is animate does not mean that it is necessarily more important. It would almost be preferable if we had picked totally different labels for those two categories in the language. Everything's either red or blue or something like that. And the reason I say that is, for example, body parts. Some body parts are inanimate, including the heart, but other body parts, like the shoulder, are animate. And the same thing happens with food. So even very sacred foods like wild rice, monomen, or blueberries, minan, they are inanimate. And some other similar types of foods like a raspberry, miskominug, are animate. So it's almost arbitrary. And it might be tempting to look and say, well, rocks are animate, they're spiritual. Pipes are animate, they're spiritual, but it's actually not quite that way. Lots of other spiritual things are just inanimate. And sometimes things that seem very unimportant end up being animate. Fry bread is animate, whether or not you think that's important. So having said that much, think of those as arbitrary distinctions. There are some patterns, and someday one of you is going to write us a dissertation and figure this all out, and I'm going to sleep so much better at night. But there does tend to be a pattern where things associated with summer time tend to be inanimate. So water, nibe, inanimate. Lake, zagaigan, inanimate. Zibi, inanimate. That's the word for river. And things that are associated with winter tend to be animate. So goon for snow, animate. Agimug, snowshoes, animate, and so forth. And so as you dig a little deeper, you will see some patterns, but there isn't a universal rule for figuring that out. It's important to know that because then when we get into colors in Ojibwe, it makes a difference if things are animate or inanimate. Also in Ojibwe, we have broad color categories, like you might hear the word miskwa, meaning red, but it's really a category of things that are red or red-like. Ozawa is another color category, and that includes brown and yellow. So it's another category in the language. And we usually use words of reference if you need to be more specific. So inande means to be colored a certain way if it's inanimate, or inanzo if it's animate. And usually we will morph those words into some other root in order to describe something more specifically. So for example, a mean is a blueberry, and if you want to say something is violet or the color of a blueberry, minande if it's inanimate, or minanzo if it's animate. And so you can be very specific with your colors in Ojibwe, but the major words that you'd look up in a dictionary are really best thought of as color categories. Now, the other roots that morph onto the words describe texture. So most of the color words will have multiple variations depending on the texture of what you're describing. So for example, the root makade pertains to something that is colored black. But you really have to look at the roots to understand which one to use in which place. So I'll start with the animate ones. But if you said makade wakozi, that would describe something that is animate and tree or stick-like. So makade wakuzi wa au matig, like that. This tree is black, as often happens to the maple trees when you get a kind of explosion of black color from the sugar maples. And then if you said makade wa bikizi, that would be he or she is black, but it would describe something that is rock or metallic. So that would be used for any number of things from geographical features, to objects, pipe, and so forth. And then makade wegizi is something that is animate and cloth-like. So makade wegizi, like even the words for most dialects, the words for a dress are animate. And so makade wegizi would be used to describe something cloth-like and animate. And then makade wa bigizi would be something that is animate and kind of string or rope-like. Makade waguzi would be something that is animate but in more of a liquid or fluid form. And makadewizi would be kind of the root word for something that is animate and could be multi-elemental. So those are kind of the core roots for describing texture within the animate realm. Within the inanimate realm, there are similar roots, but they will actually have different endings to describe the inanimate condition of whatever you're talking about. So if we took another color category like red, misqua, here's how some of those would work. So misqua wakwad would be something that is inanimate and stick or tree-like. Even though trees themselves are animate, sometimes you have items made out of wood that are inanimate. Misqua bikud would be something inanimate that is hard, rock or metallic. And although rocks and metals are usually animate by themselves, sometimes you do have items that are fashioned out of those things that happen to be inanimate. Misquegud is used in reference to any kind of red cloth. And you might have items made out of cloth that happen to be animate, but most of the cloth words are inanimate. So that's a pretty common word, misquegud. And then if you have something that's kind of string or rope-like, misquabigud would be the word used to describe that. If you have something liquid, misquagamin would be a red liquid. And you'll even see that in words like the word for red lake, misquagami wizaga igun, the lake with the red body of water. Misquagamin for liquid things, and then misquanaquad would be something that is red and cloud-like. And pretty much most of the weather words, including all of the cloud words, happen to be inanimate, so there really isn't quite an animate partner to that one. The anaquad words are describing cloud or something that could be like mist form or something like that, where there's precip in some form. And so even when someone has a name like red cloud, it's really the weather word misquanaquad that is used to describe it. And then misquabate would be something that is red and smoke-like. So if there's a red smoke coming up. And then the multi-elemental kind of generic word inanimate for red would be misqua. So I hope that gives a little better sense of some of the categorizations within the language when we talk about colors by texture and animacy, inanimate or animate, and then how to be descriptive in picking the right words to use for describing colors in the Ojibwe language. Thanks a lot for watching today. Miigwech. Thanks for watching today. I'm Anton Treuer. Let's keep in touch. I'm active on social media, and my website has lots of information on my books, speaking engagements, free Ojibwe language resources, resources for teachers, and more. Miigwech.